Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the Update Fire and Ice dev server. We're having a look at something which is sat in the files right now, but not in the tech trees at the moment, or not even in as a vehicle to kind of see. This is the Uss Frank Knox. It is actually labeled as a premium for 1600 GE, and what the Frank Knox is a gearing class destroyer. Now we have some gearings already in the game. When it comes to the general tech trees, you can find the USS gearing right here at 4.7, but there are differences between it and the Frank Knox itself. The Frank Knox has 3 of the dual-mounted 5-inch Mark 12 cannons. These are fantastic turrets, by the way. These are some of the best in the game. The Mark 38 mounts, I would say they're better than the other ones that America has, just because generally they provide a really good firepower on the 5-inch guns. You can see the first stage fire rate is 22 rounds per minute, meaning that on every gun the actual reload is less than 3 seconds on the first stage, which is kind of nuts. It has 40 ready use pieces of ammunition, and even after you get rid of that, the standard fire rate is still a round every 4 seconds, which is still very strong for 6 guns. You can just keep firing over and over again. At the same time, this thing has 2 dual 40mm. You can see them here in this configuration on both sides of the vehicle. And then also, it has 2 quad sets of Bofors, which you can see back here in this setup, which is always deadly. It also has a bunch of 20mm sat around the place. There's 11 of them in total. You can see one here, and then also here. There's a few others dotted around the ship to give you a bit more AA cover on the vehicle to try and keep you alive. And of course, the 5-inch guns are multi-purpose, so you can use them to pretty much go after anything. One of the nice things about these turrets is they have a very fast targeting speed as well. You can see 21 degrees per second, so getting shots off is not too shabby. Then in the center, you have these massive engines, plus the transmissions and the smoke funnels. So taking out its full propulsion is going to be quite hard to do, because it kind of has like 2 separate sets of them. So if you knock out one, like this area, then this one can still keep running. The way to obviously hit them would probably be the transmissions. Maybe that's the way to go for a machine like this. It's a standard destroyer, so it doesn't really have too much armor. It has the wonderful anti-fragmentation armor, which can be super annoying to face if you only have HE, and it can't penetrate through this. This thing can be impervious to a lot of different stuff. It has anti-frag on its search radar as well. Oh, sorry, not search radar, but I believe this is the fire director. Yeah, it is. And then you also have a little bit of armor on the turrets, and also on the top here, 13mm. So a little bit of armor, a little bit more than other destroyers that we see around the place. So there's at least that. The fire director for the 5-inch guns, it has only a 93% measure accuracy, which is kind of a surprise. And also, its calculation time is pretty slow compared to a lot of other American ships which are around the place. So that's something to watch out for. I feel like this would actually be better than what we see before. It does have a search radar though, which is pretty cool. So you'll be able to see planes coming in. That's one of the big additions they did over the last few years for Naval. Then for the modifications, it's pretty standard. So this thing does get torpedoes. It gets 10 of them. You can see 5 here, and then also 5 here. They actually has this really cool thing on the top of it. Do you see this? How cool is that? But anyway, it gets 10 Mark 15 torpedoes. So it does have access to the torpedo mode. The torpedo mode gives it 3,650 distance, where the standard Mark 15 gives you 5.5 kilometers. So they're not the strongest torpedoes in the world. There are definitely better ones which are around the place. It can also carry depth charges if you like having exposed ammo racks. And then also, at the same time, it has all of the standard rounds for the 5 inches. So you have the standard HE, which is pretty good for getting score. Then you have the standard APs, which are very good for being able to hit ammo racks and making them go pop. And then you got the HEVT, which is good against aircraft and similar stuff. So the 5 inches living up to their name, being incredibly multi-purpose in the battle. Then for the 40mm, you have the APT Heffy T-belt, you have the Heffy belt mainly, and then also the AP belt. So nothing too crazy there, no HEVT or anything on the 40s, instead just standard rounds really. So looking at this thing, it being a gearing class and it being added to the American area of 5.0, which is already very strong, this will be a really nice premium to pick up, to be able to, you know, kind of go along with everything else. The guns are just insanely good on something like this. You can see all of the base fire for AA and stuff like that, the 20s and the 40s, just giving a good old rat-a-tat. And then when you have a look at like the 5-inch guns, they're just able to nuke pretty much any destroyer which is around the place. One of the things that should always be noted about these guns is they're incredibly good against other destroyers, but sometimes they struggle against some of the heavier things that they're going to face. So for example, they don't always do well against heavy cruisers, just because of the penetration and then the damage after penetration. But against other destroyers, you can see that because of just the standard fire rate of these things, you can just keep firing over and over and over again without a break, with, you know, the general sequential fire, and they just can't do anything. They're just going to eventually get annihilated. You can just roll down the destroyer and just kill everything on it as you go, and that guy's going to be dead within a very small matter of time. You can see already with the HE, just over a very short period of time, the destroyer has no turrets, it pretty much has no crew, and it pretty much just has nothing going on for it. There's nothing that it's able to do anymore, and that's because stuff like the Frank Knox and many of the other American destroyers that are around this BR can just keep pumping damage over and over and over again, even when the first stage runs out. So there's no way that someone like this could really do anything. You know, you could switch to AP and shoot for the ammo if you wanted to, just to try and like kind of take it out, but you can see how much damage that you can do to something super quickly. The major issue is when you start facing stuff like this, or, well, you're not going to face stuff like that. Well, actually you might. I think I can't, no, I think that might be a HIPAA, right? Or it might be an organ. So yeah, you can face stuff like that, but then that's where your torpedoes and stuff like that come in, instead of some of the other stuff which you had before. So the vehicles like this, like the destroyers for America, they're easily the best destroyers in the game, just because of how powerful their guns are, just because of the fact that they can just constantly keep firing over and over. That's what made the Porter so good back in the day, and that's what makes stuff like the Mitchell really good with this fire arc setup. And you can, no matter what target you're facing, you can always do damage to it, and you can always just pump through, because you either have the AP or HE. It's what makes these things strong. The real question is it worth picking something like this up as a premium, or is it better to get something like the Moffett, which is basically the same price, and also has more guns and also higher rewards on it? But remember, all that stuff is subject to change when it comes to the dev server to live server, so maybe it changes going forward. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Forge, Siegebreak, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, and also Sem Arslan, Wilkski, Uncle Bean, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.